Say hello to everyone. Yeah, we're live. It is 7:41. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully everybody had a good Halloween. You had lots of trick-or-treaters. We had a few, not as many as we would normally have, but that's okay. That just meant more candy for us. Yesterday, as you can see from the photo, I did get some stuff done. Those are the big block Chevy heads. They're 291 castings for the big block Chevy people out there that are familiar with the different casting numbers. That means that they're early rec port, big valve heads, high performance. And they are the heads that are going to be going on a 396 buildup that I'm doing. So it's a 375 horse 396 L78, or if you happen to be a 1965 Corvette owner, you will argue that they are 425 horsepower. I just kind of want to see, like I did with the other small blocks, how much power one of these things actually makes. And so I'm gonna build one like I did with those others where we reproduce it. But yesterday I was able to, because it was it was fairly nice. It was a little bit cloudy, but it was warm enough. Got the heads out, got them out in the sun, and was able to throw a couple of coats of paint on them. Now I need to do the block, although it's raining this morning, so that's probably not likely going to happen outside. I could do it in the garage, but I like to do it when the block or the heads are, when they're nice and warm. I like to sit them out in the sun for a while. It grabs the paint better and stuff. So I did get some projects done yesterday, despite it being Halloween and getting all the other videos up. So that was good. But today I want to talk about, somebody had asked a question about or made a comment about making the most powerful, like stock small block. They said, I challenge you to make the most powerful LS using only stock stuff. So first of all, the challenge stuff, that doesn't motivate me. Oh, here, that's what I'm missing. I'm missing more light. Now the camera's happier. So I thought about it for a while and thought, okay, well, right off the bat, if we're only using stock stuff, the most powerful combinations are going to be, because what he's wanting is a hodgepodge of different stock stuff that would ultimately create the most powerful thing. The most powerful thing is going to be one of these supercharged versions, the LSA or the ZR1 motor, which is an LS4 or something like that. So if you discount the supercharged stuff and get those out of the way, as we start talking about just only NA versions, the most powerful factory version that you could put together of an LS motor would be a factory LS7. Obviously, you would never see those in wrecking yards. There may be those for sale somewhere online. You could buy that. So a factory 7-liter 427 LS7 headed deal. The other thing that's nice about this combination, this will come up later when we're talking about other versions of this that we would put together, that would be things that would be more readily available. So we'll basically be going down in displacement as we talk about this, because the bigger motors make more power. The 427 has LS7 heads. It has the biggest camshaft. It also has 1.8 rockers. It has a decent intake manifold. It's not that, relatively speaking, the LS7 manifold is not nearly as good as the LS3 manifold is for that combination. The LS3 manifold, probably the best factory manifold that they made. So kudos to whoever the engineers that designed the LS3 intake manifold. You guys did a heck of a job. It's very, very hard to beat. The LS7 manifold, it's very easy to make a manifold that makes more power than that. In all honesty, that's not why they were designing that, and that's not what they designed it for. They didn't make it to make the most power. If that were it, it would be different and it would make more power. But if you wanted to put together a using only stock stuff, that one already has everything that you would use to make the most power. So if we step down from there to things that are more readily available, you would take a look at an LS3, and then a stock LS3 might be the most powerful, except what I would do if I could mix and match stuff is I would take an LS3, and if the LS7 heads will fit on that bore size, if they wouldn't, I would make them by notching the bore a little bit. I would put LS7 heads on it, not because the thing with a stock camshaft needs more airflow, but it would make I think it would make more power. If you put the LS7 heads and the LS7 intake manifold on the LS3, and then also put the LS7 camshaft in it, with the LS7 and the LS9 camshafts are the most powerful factory camshafts that you can put in there. We've already run those. Those make the most power. the reason that I would do all of this, even if we didn't get a whole bunch more from the heads themselves, but I think we might, is you also get the 1.8 rocker. So the 1.8 rocker with that camshaft is definitely going to make more power than the LS3 camshaft is. So that LS7 top end and camshaft on top of the LS3 would be the next most powerful. It would be just a smaller version kind of the LS7. So that would be the way to go there. And then obviously if whatever these arbitrary rules are would allow, you would mill the heads and bring the compression up. It already has it already has a flat top piston in the LS3, so that would work fine. You could, of course, I don't know, you couldn't do that with the there would be no rod available probably to stroke that. But then the next step down from that sort of 6.2 liter would be, okay, now we need to look at a 6 liter. What would we do to a 6 liter? Well, a 6 liter is not going to be able to take the LS7 stuff. So the 6 liter, the most powerful combination you could make with using stock stuff would be a flat top 6 liter. So an LQ9, something like that has a flat top piston, because that's what you want with the most compression. You would put an LS3 head on it. I would use the LS3 head specifically. It has the lighter valves. It has enough spring. I would use those heads and the LS3 intake manifold, and then an LS9 or an LS7 camshaft. You won't be able to use the 1.8 rockers, because the 1.8 rockers that are used on the LS9 will not transfer over to the LS3 head. You could, I guess, again, if rules would allow, re-drill the head, because the rocker needs to be put in a different position than the 1.7 rockers. And then you could utilize the 1.8 rocker and get more lift, and then it would be worth more power. But that's the combination that I would put together to try to make the most power. That camshaft, an LS9 or an LS7 camshaft, is the most powerful camshaft. The LS3 head would be the best head for that 6 liter. The LS3 intake manifold and 90 millimeter throttle body would all be the best stuff. And then a flat top piston is going to give you the most static compression. Again, you could mill the head if they would, in the stock stuff, if they would allow, you could port that and then, make more power. The thing that's going to hold back being able to get big power from any of that stuff is that you don't really have, even with an LS7 or LS9 camshaft, you just don't have a lot of camshaft to take advantage of the additional head flow. So you got lots of head flow with the LS3. If you went down to, so that would be for a 6 liter. If you went down to a 5.3, the 5.3, the best combination would be, if you could do porting, I would port an 706 or an 862 head, because you'll never have enough camshaft to take advantage of much more cylinder head than that. If you could port it, you could mill it, you could run it. I would run a flat top piston in it. So you'd either get the flat top version of the 5.3, like the L33 that we have, or you could run a 4.8 piston on the 5.3, because it's a flat top. Then I would pick a 706 or an 862 head. You might try a 243 or a 799 that you would mill and port. You could do that. Then the best factory intake manifold for that cathedral port combination would be a Trailblazer SS, and then some kind of 90 millimeter throttle body. 4.8 already has what it needs, basically. And then with the 5.3, I would put the LS9 or LS7 camshaft in it. You can't use the 1.8 rocker, but use a 1.7 rocker. And then that combination with that camshaft actually would go a good bit over 400 horsepower. It'd probably be in the, 420 or 430, something like that, probably, and maybe even a little bit more if you really whittled away at all of the stuff. And then on a 4.8, the best thing you can do to a 4.8 to make more power is make it a 5.3. You would put the 5.3 stuff in it and make it bigger. But if you kept the 4.8, obviously you'd use the flat top piston, the same combination as the 5.3. Then you'd put a LS7 or LS9 camshaft in it, mill it. I would definitely use an 862 or a 706 head, mill that, port it, put an LS9 camshaft in it, use the Trailblazer SS intake manifold. And those are the combinations that I would run on to make the most power out of all of the stock stuff. Because I don't think that there's anything else there's no other secret that you would use on any of those combinations to try to pick power up even further beyond that stuff. I think that those. We skipped over the 5.7. So on a 5.7, I would use. I think I would. Again, it would get the LS7, LS9 camshaft. I think that they have a flat top piston for the 5.7. I'm trying to remember what an LS1 piston looks like. But if they didn't, you would put the flat top. Well, you couldn't put it from a 5.3, could you? Because that's a specific bore. So an LS6, you'd make an LS6 then, but I'd use a 243 or a 799 head. Obviously, you would mill that and port it if you could. I would use a Trailblazer SS intake manifold. I would use an LS9, LS7 camshaft in it. It's the same thing as the 4.8 and 5.3 kind of. It's just that I don't know about I think that the piston is a flat top. What's the skinny on big block valve springs for a flat tappet? Can't seem to find a go-to spring, a rotator, eliminator, combinator to go to. That would be the correct insight without shims or machining. It does. What heads are you starting out with to make that? I just bought a head for my H22. It came with a Skunk 2 flat face valves with 35-degree valve job and titanium retainers. I have several dual valve springs I've ordered previously. Any cam recommendations? Do they have lots of different cams for the H series? I just am not that. I haven't done very much on an H series. I haven't done that. I don't know how much kind of power, 600 horsepower, you should, like Skunk probably has a stage 1 or stage 2 kind of cam set for that. I believe my LH6 had flat tops in it. Yeah, and the LC9, the L33 for the 5.3 stuff all kind of run 1.8 on IH6. You can run 1.8 rockers, but not factory LS7 or rockers on it. They have 1.8 rockers, but I wouldn't put aftermarket rockers on an LS. I just would run stock ones. 360 peanut port heads. So that is going to have they have rotator eliminators. What I wish that they did, and I actually kind of wanted to have somebody make and offer this product, is I wish they had smaller, thinner rotator eliminators. They're all 300,000s, and I wish that they had 2s or 250s or 1s, and that would make life a lot easier for spring assemblies on those. I have an LS6 with a blower making 650-ish wheel. Should I build the LS6 block or get an iron truck block maybe for 1,000 wheel horsepower? I guess the question is, is it a poor decision to build the LS6 block? No, the LS6 block is good. I normally don't go over 1,000 horsepower on those aluminum blocks. That's a good block. It's cheap to go to a wrecking yard. If you can get a 6-liter, you're going to be better off anyway than you are with that 5.7. So if you can get an iron 6-liter or an aluminum 6-liter, but an iron 6-liter would definitely be a better choice, because it's going to start out making more power even with the same parts on it. Should I port my 862 heads with the turbo edition? It depends on your power output, Mr. Moore. You don't need to. If you're trying to make less than 1,000 horsepower, you're still going to be able to get to the limit of the turbo with that. Do you know if there's any other machine work required other than 30 over to make a 408 out of an LQ4? Forward pistons raw recommendations. You need to check and make sure that that everything clears. There are so many different combinations of rod and crankshaft and stuff. You would definitely have to do something with the windage tray. The crank normally, the rod bolts normally hit the windage tray. So you might have to space the windage tray or dent the windage tray, which we've done a lot. And when you space the windage tray, the problem is that because a lot of guys will take washers and put them on all of the studs that hold the windage tray, which are the main cap bolts, they're bolts. And when you do that and you space the windage tray, you're also spacing the pickup. When you space the pickup, you're pushing the pickup basically toward it's actually down. You're pushing but when it's upside down, it's up. You're pushing the pickup toward the bottom of the pan. And when you do that, if there's not enough room between the pickup and the pan, you have a problem. So you need to measure all that stuff when you're doing it. And that's one of the fun parts of building a stroker motor. Michael, so you're painting your block and stuff. I have a pan to paint and a front cover and the block, but not the intake won't be painted because it's aluminum. Gasket match porting and polishing on my 862 heads for the 5.3. Can I make power? Can I put the intake manifold on of a 5.7? You can put it from a 5.7, but if it's an L or an LS1 intake manifold, that's the worst intake that they made. If it's an LS6 intake manifold, which they switched over to, and I don't remember what year they did it in, I think that's pretty early. So I think that's actually an LS1 intake manifold. So that's the least powerful of all of the factory intake manifolds. You'd be better off putting a truck manifold if it fits, or an LS6 or a Dorman or a Fast. Porting, gasket match, porting and polishing. The gasket matching I wouldn't do. I wouldn't even worry about that. That's going to be a very limited benefit. If you're going to spend time porting on it, spend time unshrouding the valve in the chamber, and then also spend time in the bowl. That's where most of your gain is going to come from. What head should I use if I did a built 6-liter with a blower? Are you talking about any cylinder head available? If you're using a stock head, I would use, I don't know what intake manifold you have, but the one that would make the most power would be a factory rec port head. If you're using a cathedral port head, I would use a 799 or a 243. If you're going to an aftermarket head, a 220 ASCAS trick flow head, or there's lots of really good ported stock heads out there. Of a mild build, stage 2 headers, cold air. I bought an aftermarket intake and 42-pound injectors. Do you think it's too much injector? No, you can always, you're going to have to trim the fuel. I mean, you're going to have to tune it to use a larger injector in a combination like that. But a 42-pound injector isn't, we run 80s on a 4.8, even on an NA 4.8. So you're fine. You can just trim the fuel back, have it supply less. Sounds like a low increase, not really worth it of a benefit to eliminate the balance shaft. I'm going to try doing the balance shaft on the 2.2 and see what gain it's actually worth. So it'll be interesting to see how much power, or actually not on the 2.2, on the 2.5. The 2001 and up got the LS6. I thought it was later than that, than 99. How are the stock intakes on my LS2? They're not bad. They're actually not as good as the LS6, despite the fact that they have a larger 90 millimeter opening in them. They're better than the LS1. Do the peanut port heads gain anything from bowl blending? Yes. And smoothing the runners, running a 454 mild cam. Definitely in the bowl area, they will benefit from that. DZ, you're asking about balancing a crank. The internals on any engine need to be balanced. Balancing is very important. You'll know if it's not balanced. It will be it'll be really, really shaky. Oh, and we need a poll here, right? Poll time. What are we going down there next to do? We're going down there next to run the turbos on the 5.3 and probably fix the 2 stripped out cam retaining plate bolts. I also got to do some 5-liter stuff. 5-liter forward. And maybe the Magnum too. Or the 8.1. The 8.1 is kind of ready to go too, I think. .1 turbo stuff would be good. So I got to think of a poll. Let's see. Rattle Candy, I already have flashbacks of Earl Shive. $90. I'll pay any car for $99.95. Morning, Richard. Wanted to say thank you for replying to my email. I always try to reply to all the emails and all the comments. I figure that's part of my job. And plus, I like engaging with everybody. I'm a car guy, so then they're car guys. Thanks for sharing your hours of experience with us. Nice to get answers with the fine print of forums. Forums, you get. I think the forums are good, and the groups are good. You get lots of. The problem is you get opinions and trolls and stuff, and that's kind of problematic. But if you can weed through that, you can get some information. Big John, 6-liter flat tops, truck intake, $799, quench tightened to 40,000, sloppy stage 2, 2 degrees retard. Recommended for driving more than racing. You're not going to need a whole bunch of stall on a 6-liter on a sloppy stage 2, although retarding it is going to hurt that. I'm curious why you would have done that, but I would think 2,800 would be more than enough for that application. Are you familiar with Bosch LSU sensor for AM of the wideband? Can two-step, particularly the banging and popping the drag strip, cause sensor failure, or will it be safe? I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I don't know how much you're altering. How much are you altering the airfield during the two-step process, and are you throwing flames and stuff at it, and how close is the sensor? That would be my question. Yeah, Michael, his comment was forums can be useful. They tend to develop echo chambers. And if you don't understand what he means by that, it just means that guys will say one thing and then that will become gospel. And especially that's true based on the hierarchy structure of a forum. You get one guy on there that's the guy. He's the guy where his Dodge Omni or his LS1 or his Coyote or his 5-liter Mustang, his is the most powerful one. He's made the most power, and he's the guy that's out winning races or whatever. And so no matter what the guy says, everybody believes what he says. Oh, he's going fast. He must know what he's talking about. Those two things are not necessarily causal. They can be correlated, but it's not an absolute thing. He can still be wrong about a lot of stuff, as can everybody that's giving you an opinion about something, especially if he's giving you an opinion about something and not giving you facts. A lot of the forums are based on opinion and not actual data. And even when guys want to present the things that they're presenting as data, it's not often data. It's just something that happened plus opinion. But if it came from a guy that's the guy, then everybody else below this person is like, oh yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. And then it becomes established. And then if anybody comes in and says, hey, look, here's data that shows that that's not accurate. Oh, then everybody jumps on them. Yeah, but you can't say anything that's wrong. You can't say anything that goes against what Joe said because Joe's the guy. He knows everything. And that becomes a problem. Your 820 plus horsepower LS 4.8 liter LS build. I'm using everything in that build. It's gonna go in a Dodge Magnum wagon. That'll be good. It's pretty easy to make 800 horsepower with a 4.8 liter and boost. Just a cam and you're halfway there at least with the right cam. Okay, so the poll for today, should the sketchy Junkyard 4.8 liter that I have, the one that I put back together, it's of questionable descent, should the sketchy Junkyard 4.8 liter get some boost after cleaning the heads? Because it does need more cleaning of the heads. I'm going to have to take those off and clean out the rest of all of the carbon and stuff. But should that thing get some boost? Does it? I think it deserves it, right? It's put its time in. That kind of like how Matt got jumped on for reusing head bolts and gaskets over on Yellow Bolt, but at the power. Yeah, and there that's the thing, is there are guys like we've talked about time and time again. There are guys that are like 100% all in, and this is the only thing that they do. You got to do it 100% right. Everything has to be 100% remachined and rebuilt and new stuff. And it not only has to be new, but it has to be the good, expensive stuff. It has to be that. It has to be a $25,000 or $30,000 rebuild on your LS, or it has to be just junk thrown together. And then the argument is in between there. And so Yellow Bolt is a lot of 100% experts giving you their opinion on stuff. And so when you go and do something against the established norm, people get their feathers ruffled. Can we talk about how to measure pushrod length and how to know when it has zero preload? Yeah, zero preload's easy to determine. I do it by finger tightening so you put the when you're testing it, the cam needs to be on the heel of the cam. It needs to be when the lobe is not pushing up the lifter. So the lifter needs to be stationary. When you're rotating the cam, you'll see it will go up and then down. And when it comes back down, it needs to be in that position. It's down in that position for a lot of rotation of the camshaft. So 360 minus the duration of the camshaft, I guess. So it's on the heel of the cam. When the lifter is on, the cam is on the heel of the cam, the lifter is on the heel, and then you put the push rod in and then go to bolt down the rockers, and you tighten the bolt until you can start feeling drag on the push rod. So zero lash is when the lifter is contacting the camshaft, the push rod's contacting the lifter, the rocker's contacting the push rod, and then the rocker, the other side of the rocker, is also contacting the valve tip. That's zero lash. Then after you have zero lash, you count the number of turns that it takes to you'll bottom the rocker down into the rocker stand, basically down into I call it the cup, but it's down into the arc of the rocker stand, because the rocker has an arc to it and the stand has an arc to it. When those go down and meet, you count the number of turns that it takes to go from the zero lash position down to that. Half turn's fine, 1 turn's fine, turn and a half probably fine. Once you get up beyond that, you're getting to the point where you may be, when the lifter pumps up, you may be holding the valve open. So anywhere in that range, the push rod length is right. Or not right, it's acceptable. Torque to your yield bolts will, trust me, I know. They won't all break. You can reuse the stock head bolts many times. I've done that lots, and you can reuse them and they will work, and you can run boost on them. Matt does it all the time. I personally don't like to do it. If I'm putting together a motor that I'm going to run boost on, we usually take those out and I put ARP studs in it. I know that they're expensive and I know people want to do it cheaper than that, but that's what I do. I'm not saying everybody has to do that, because I know that I've run boost on stock bolts. I like running them on stock bolts where I haven't ever taken them out, because when you take them out and put them back in, then you've stretched them again. So I don't like doing that. I think the more times you do that, the worse the bolt gets, the more likely it is to break. But I've done it every way. I've done it with them, the bolts in there the way that the motor come from the rec yard, and we just run boost on it. This 5.3 is a perfect example. It's already had boost. It has stock bolts on it, stock head gaskets, all that stuff is stock. I've done it like that. I've taken those out and put them back in after we've done something like putting a ring gap in it, because I didn't have ARPs laying around, which I sometimes have. And so I've done it that way, and that works. You can run boost on it, and it made 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 runs, whatever. It works fine. I wouldn't keep doing that if I was going to the track and I was trying to make big power. I would put studs in it. Again, it's the right way. This is 100% right versus what works. If this works, you can't say that you have to do this, because you don't. You don't have to do that. This will work. It can also break, but it does. If it broke 100% of the time, then there would be only one way to do it. But it doesn't break 100% of the time. The difference between can and does is a different thing. If you only own one cylinder, it won't even crank over. If the piston is in it, it'll actually explode. I don't know what that was response to. Yeah. Yeah, or maybe that's more of the stuff from Yellow Bullet. Yeah, you get that. I mean, that's, you get experts on there that know everything. Any recommendation for high rev, reliable LS horsepower? Doesn't matter. So all you want to do is run RPM. You're not going to do that reliably. As you go up in engine speed, the reliability is going to go down. And if you want to run high RPM reliability, or you want to combine high RPM and reliability, that's going to equal money. I'm a believer in valve jobs and porting for power. Yeah, you can, if you can know how to port, you can, and even if you don't know how to port, if you're just learning, you can get some decent gains out of porting. Most people can't do valve jobs by themselves, but they can do the lapping, which helps the sealing. Michael, speaking of echo chamber, another channel said if I paint my block red, it'll make more power. Well, it's racing red. That's why they call it that. Lapping valves and seats instead of grinding or cutting does hurt power. I don't know which one of those is. If you say it does hurt power, it doesn't hurt power, because I've already tested that back to back. So it doesn't do that all the time. Again, it's all the time versus sometimes. Can would be a better choice of word there. And I haven't ever seen that. A valve job is definitely better. If that's optimum, especially if you do the right kind of valve job on it. But this side also works. Have you seen a 4-valve 6.8 liter V10 being built? I have not, but I haven't ever seen a 4-valve head for a V10. You'd have to put some together, I guess. I know it isn't really your specialty, but why are people that race more likely to use dome control? Why are they applying? Are you talking about them applying pressure from some pressurized source for the dome? I mean, for the wastegate? I have a 383 AFR 195 heads, comp, hydraulic roller, flat tops, air gap. So is it a 383 Chevy? Hydraulic roller, flat tops, air gap, 750 quick fill carb is tuned well, but after a high RPM or so, then it comes back to idle. It has a popping. Just after running high RPM? Does the popping go away? Is it a hard D cell? Is the thing getting really rich on the hard D cell? I don't think it would foul the plugs on one D cell though. Have you ever tested firing order? Yes, we've done the 4.7 swap on Chevys and it doesn't do anything. Is there an engine that intrigues you that I'd have a chance to work? Yes, lots and lots of them. I want to put a rotary on the engine dyno. I mean, I've done some stuff on the chassis dyno, but I would like to run one on the engine dyno. Also, not every bolt with a torque angle spec is torque to yield. Sometimes that's used on non-torque to yield bolts for more accurate torque. Yes. What is angle torque? That's when you turn the bolt a certain number of degrees. They're trying to get the stretch in the bolt. Because think about the way that a lock washer works when you tighten the bolt down. and you're compressing the lock washer because it's putting load on the bolt. If it puts load on the bolt, that stops the bolt from wanting to like vibrate out. Torquing the bolt does the same thing. When you're torquing the bolt, what you're doing is you're not clamping it down more. You're actually stretching the bolt. And when it stretches the bolt, it's like a rubber band deal. It's like putting load on it. Is it a good idea to change rockers on an L36NA when everything is stock? Why would you want to change the rockers? Are you trying to change the rocker ratio to get more lift on it? Leland, is the 383 going to 6,500 RPM? Is it going into valve float? I mean, if you're making peak power at 5,500, there's no reason to go to 6,500. And if you're going to 6,500 and going into valve float, if you keep doing that, you're going to break something, probably a spring. People put a set amount of pressure on the top of the wastegate as opposed to using a map reference to control CO2 or compressed air to the top of the gate. How are they putting a fixed amount of pressure on the top of the gate? What are they using? Do they have a pressurized air source or something? Matthew, they're making a custom pair of 4V heads for the 6.8 worth a look YouTube channel called Build It Yourself. So if you said they're making a custom set of heads, are they billet heads? Because that seems like an awful lot of trouble to go through for that particular engine combination. The only thing I think about on the wastegates is having a fixed amount. Is the dome pressure that they're putting in there, is it fixed? Is that pressure fixed on the top? Maybe they're getting more repeatability that way. I think they do like the guy with the Ellis head 300 did. Oh, they cut up a few heads. Okay, that would make more sense because a billet head would be really expensive. Yeah, Michael, I understand putting pressure on top of it, but if you wanted all the boost, you would just put boost going to that, so that the wastegate would never open, or you would just not have a wastegate. But I think what they're trying to do is get better control of it, and if you have assistance from pressure on the top, especially if that's a fixed amount, maybe they're getting better repeatability. S10, I haven't seen the problems that they run across using one versus the other. I've never seen any kind of test that shows me that, or any kind of data logging from any track testing that shows me the difference between those two. And maybe it's a preference for the tuners. I have a 6-liter. I'm planning to install 706 heads. My question is, what is the best cam to use? What's the best valve springs and intake, the throttle body combination, or stock injectors? Okay. You need to define best, and only you can do that. The camshaft that you pick is like picking a personality. So you have to decide what you're trying to get out of this, how much power you're trying to make. The only question I can really answer there is stock injectors are not going to be okay if you run a cammed 6-liter with those heads on it. Tell me how much power you're trying to make. And lucky for you, there are umpteen million videos up on my channel with 6-liter combinations. So you just get to pick the power curve that you want. It goes away after idling a minute in the Chevrolet. So it could be that you're getting a rich mixture. I doubt that it's that the stumbling would continue if you go into valve float. He wants the personality to be like the exit keys your car. That's not good. Should treat her. You didn't do her right, man. You done her wrong. 98 LS1 M6 Corvette non-Z06 runs great, but needs more of the heads cam and intake power. Love all the videos, pride, but heavy emphasis on the 6-liter makes me want to rip out the 5.7. There's 5.7 videos up too, and all of the things that work on a 6.0 also work on a 5.7, and that'll put you midway between like a 5.3 and the 6.0, and you could make good power on a 5.7 by putting the right, good heads and intake manifold. A 5.7 with a fast intake manifold and ported heads and a big camshaft in it, it's going to be pretty powerful. It just won't be as powerful as a 6.0 with the same things in it. Find a GMC V12, that would be good. BTR stage 2 or 3, trending kit 600s. What is the safe horsepower for Junkyard Vortec with ring gap and turbo? There's lots of racers running them out there at 1,000 horsepower or more. Guys at the drag strip running them run after run after run. So if everything's right, you can do that. Lower horsepower levels will also be okay. Senior videos, I'm aiming for 500 horsepower. Thank you very much for all that you do. What size injectors do you recommend? Are you ever going to run boost on it? If you're going to run boost on it, I would put 80s in it. And if you're not, in the 42, 46, 50 range is fine. Don't worry about injectors being too big. You're going to have to tune this combination anyway. So if you're going to have to tune it, you have to put an injector in it that will support enough power. So that sort of injector size will support every bit of power that you're going to make. 500 is fairly easy. And you don't have to put an injector in there that just barely supports the amount of power. You want to have more than you use. Like when we ran the stock 4.8 on the dyno, when we compared the truck manifold to the carbureted manifold, when we ran the truck manifold, we had 80-pound injectors in it, and it idles fine and runs fine. And you just have to give it the air fuel that it wants, which you can do very easily, or a tuner can do very easily. Richard, what have you made gains wise with just a tune only? I don't do just tunes on stock motors on the chassis dyno, so I don't know how to answer that. That's not what I do. When we run a motor on the engine dyno, it already has a tune in it, and it also has a lot of other things that the motor doesn't have when you run it in the vehicle. It doesn't have accessories on it normally. It has a good exhaust on it. It doesn't have any of the air intake stuff on it, and it doesn't have the factory tune. It is already optimized with the amount of air fuel and timing that we can run when we run a stock motor. So I don't even know what the factory tune is because I've never looked at one so that I could even duplicate it on the engine dyno. But I think a tune would be certainly 10 or 15 horsepower anyway. CO2 boost control allows you to hold the wastegate shut and build boost faster, but it can also be shut off as a boost cut. But you could do that with a 3-port or a 4-port regulator with boost also, because the boost is also going to hold the thing shut until you reach the desired boost level. So I just don't know. I think that what they're talking about is a finer line between that and the dome pressure thing. Good morning from the Ford, Kentucky plant. What's going on? The cam for my 292 with a Falconer V12 is total one-off. That's very cool. Tend to get close to what I want using math. $1,000 each. I can't afford a variety pack. Yeah, if you can tell them how much power you want, I can give you a pretty good idea of what the lift and duration and LSA should be. And the thing that's nice about your combination is that a Falconer V12 head, which is just totally awesome, is going to give you lots of head flow. So it'll be easier for you to make whatever kind of power you want to make. I think ultimately you're going to be limited in the RPM potential of that 292. 80-pound injectors are good for how much power? Well, NA, they're good for a lot. So if we take 80 and multiply it by 16, that's over 1,200 horsepower NA, but less under boost. Times 0.85. So we've done 1,000 horsepower stuff with 80-pound injectors on race gas, and then it would be less on E85. Just realized lots of my LS parts are dishwasher safe. They are. Should the 4.8 get boost? Probably not. But is Richard going to do it? Yes, we have to, right? I mean, I did machine one of the cylinders. I took it to the Super Richie machine shop. And by that, I mean the big block Chevy ball hone with the cylinder, with the piston in place. Should the sketchy Junkyard 4.8 get some boost after cleaning the heads? 91% are saying yes. So we only have a couple of knuckleheads. The thing that we're talking about of will it work and, you know, do you have to do it the best way, is that's a perfect example. Ball honing it with the cylinder in there. Oh, you'll ruin it. You'll leave material in there. The piston will eat itself, or the ring will eat. It won't. It will absolutely work. If you see people doing stuff, especially in other countries where they don't have machining ability or money, machining money, that kind of stuff happens all the time. Yes, it'd be better take the piston out and then do that and cover the crank and clean it all out really, really good, and then put it back together. That would be ideal. This is less than ideal. This whole motor is less than ideal. And yet, how hard can I push stock head bolts on my 6-liter 85mm turbo at 7 PSI now? I don't think I'd worry about the head bolts as much as I'd worry about other things. Do you have ring gap in it? Have you ever tried to see how much power you can get from a 306? I've never run a 306, so the answer to that would be no. How much less on E85? Probably about 20 to 25% less on E85. Richard, any reason why my valve tips on my 821 LS3 rec port heads are losing? So you're mushrooming the tips. Okay, so you're running into one of a couple of things. One is that you're running into coil bind on the springs. That could cause that. Also, you're running into valve float or other types of valve train instability, which means that the rocker is like hammering on the valve. If you're running it, if you have coil bind, then it's just the camshaft is trying to force the rocker tip down into the valve, and the valve is stopping itself from, but still being pushed down. So it's got to be one of those two things. I don't think the valve would weaken over time, and that would start happening. Usually, that's an instability problem. Can you make a 4.8 into a 5.3? Yeah, a 4.8 shares two things with the 5.3. It's exactly the same block. It's exactly the same bore, and it has the same piston. A 4.8 usually has a flat top piston, but it's the same bore size piston and the same compression height. The difference between a 4.8 and a 5.3 is the crank and the connecting rods. If you change the crank and connecting rods on a 4.8, you get a 5.3, or it's easier just to go to the wrecking yard to get a 5.3, and then you have both. What injectors should I be using to feed 800 to 1,000 horsepower in E85? 800 is one size injector, and 1,000 is a different injector. 80s would be good for 800, but they're not good for 1,000 on E85. You won't get there with an 80. You need something bigger than that. A real engine, 4.62 valve with power dyne supercharger. That's the old school. Non-PI bottom, PI top end, 10 psi. Would 60-pound injectors be enough? So 60. What are you running it on? Are you running it on E85? So 60 times 16 times 0.85. Yes, that would be enough. And it probably would be enough with the 85 also. What are you waiting for on the Ford? Time and money and having a Ford motor. Scott, good morning, Richard. Just want to say thank you for the great content. Always enjoy it, learning things. Happy to help. GTA Nation, thank you very much. Are the valves they're wearing aftermarket valves? I thought that he said that they were stock ones. I'm running 11 pounds max on my unopened LS6. Not sure if I'm lucky or could be run more boost with the ring gap. Just comparing the guy's question about a 6 liter or 7 pounds. He was asking more about the strength of the head studs, and that's what I was saying. He's get into a problem, another kind of problem, maybe before he would get into that. GTA Nation, let's see what kind of question you got going on. Morning, sir. I decided to upgrade my OG 762.5. Is it an 862.53? With a TVS 1900 to an L33 with the same Magnuson supercharger on top of it. What cam rocker and valve springs and pushrod do you recommend for the new setup? So you got to tell me, I need to know how much power you're trying to make. Are you going to, on a stock TVS 1900 to an L33? So, okay, so TVS 1900, so that's a good blower. So with a supercharged application, I would try to make as much power. Are you trying to make as much power as the blower will make? So that's one kind of camshaft that I would put on it. I would use stock rockers. You can put hardened push rods in it, but stock ones will actually work. The push rod is going to be determined by, if you pick a camshaft that has a different base circle, like some of the aftermarket cams do, you may have to adjust the length of the push rod. I can't tell you what length that push rod has to be unless you measure it. So I don't know about push rods. Valve springs will come with the camshaft. When you get a camshaft, you'll pick a valve spring that will go with that camshaft. If you're trying to make lots of power, maybe something like that hot rod cam would work really well. If it's more of a driver than a Truck Norris cam, probably would be fine and still make a ton of power on that. What part do you think is going to break on a 5.3 Big Bang? The same thing that always does. It's going to be a rod, probably a rod or a piston, I would guess. S10. If they're using dome pressure, are they using an inert gas where it's not going to change? Where it's not going to change because there's not going to be any moisture in there? Good morning from windy Montana. Montana's in the house. 134 watching and only 13 likes. This is showing more than that, but yeah, we're only at 1/3 like. So you people who have not liked, you better get your likes up. Better get those likes up. Oh, Milo. Milo said, get the likes up. He's not happy about the like content. Huh? Milo, bite those likes, huh? Bite the likes. You didn't even wake up. Lazy. Rod at the bolt or at the pin. It does not break a rod bolt. Every Big Bang motor that is broken, the big end of the rod is still intact. The rod itself breaks in the middle. Although maybe it's in the middle, because usually the piston and the rod portion are just completely destroyed. Are there any future plans for a Godzilla motor? I don't have one. Mahovitz had a 7.3 that he said we might be able to run on the dyno, but I don't. Those are expensive motors, and I have so many other things that I want to run besides that. If you revisit the inline 292, I am going to run that again. I can send you a race head ported with big valves and a blower manifold. That'd be cool. Do you have a camshaft? Oh, no, I have a camshaft for those. On my screen, it's 67 likes. Yeah, it's up to 76 now. Good morning. Putting a truck 6-liter in my G body, the best heads to run. Looking for a decent NA power, but probably put boost to it later on. If you have a 6-liter, the most powerful factory head that you can put on there is going to be a rec port head. If you put a blower on it, you're going to need a rec port manifold for that. If you're going to want to run a cathedral port, then put a 799 or a 243 head on it. If you're going aftermarket, there's like a bajillion good aftermarket heads. Do LS use powder metal rods? Yes. If I'm going from a 3.8 to a 3.2 pulley, meaning going from 6 pounds to 10 pounds, should I go the Truck Norris or stage 3 BTR for more power at higher RPM, since I tend to prefer higher RPM? Are you talking about a stage 3 blower cam? The other cams that are non-PD blower cams will make more average power than the peak is, and the peak tends to be where you run into belt slippage issues. So do you want more average power or do you want more peak power? If you want more peak power, then go with a bigger cam and run it out higher. Yeah, Evan Smith has some good Godzilla stuff. Him and Brian have done stuff, and then Brian is also working with Brian Tooley because they did intake manifolds for the Godzilla. You know, these short runner, high RPM things. You were like number 53. We're up to 82. We're getting better. We're getting over the 50% range. So with a map-based control and PID loop, your desired boost stays within 1 pound. But does it do that every time on every combination with dome pressure ramp? It will fluctuate by 5 or more pounds. That 5-pound fluctuation is a huge amount. 5 pounds can be more than 100 horsepower. Richard, when you reuse head bolts on LS, do you torque them any differently? I usually torque them and I don't angle torque them. Sometimes I do. It just depends on what I have. If I have the angle torque set up like at my disposal and it's easily accessed, I would use that. If not, and if especially a lot of times we'll reuse them on NA motors, and then I just torque them to like 60 or 65 foot-pounds and just go, because it has enough to hold the head in place. That's all I'm trying to do. I built a LT1 T56 combo, looking to tune myself in the future. Would you recommend the Fuel Tech or Holly? I would recommend Holly over the Phytech stuff, if that's what you're talking about. I have a billet cam for it. No, I don't want a billet cam. It just some kind of upgrade cam. A 471 would be cool with 3 Rochester two barrels. What I'd like to do is run a 471 on the Trophy 4-cylinder. That would be awesome. Okay, so you want to roll race? Yeah, so then have a cam. Those PD blower cams definitely want to rev. They've got 120-degree LSAs on them, and they'll want to make power out on the big end. My BTR Stage 3 is a 231, 242. Yeah, that's a good size cam. Has anyone started head research for Godzilla yet? I think that they've just ported the stock ones a lot. Do likes actually accomplish anything? Well, they make me feel like you like what I'm doing. I don't know from a analytical standpoint or an analytics standpoint. If you did the stream after 6 p.m., there would be 1,000 people watching. Well, I do. I have a live feed every at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every night. So you're welcome to come to have that. But there isn't there isn't ever 1,000 people. I've never had 1,000 people watching. I don't think, not during the live stream. There are lots more people that watch it afterwards, but not during the live stream. I don't know. Probably the most people that I had do it during the live stream was probably when I had Freiberger and Dulcich on there. Have you ever tested a roots blower on an LS? Yes, that video is already up. We did it on the 383. The algorithm takes likes into account. Yeah, I would think so. I have a Nissan 3-liter V6 made to an auto trans and a rock crawler. I'm looking to gain more low and mid-range power. I'm looking to supercharge it. The likes count as viewer engagement. The algorithm tracks that. The algorithm sees all. Yes, it does. It sees everything. And I'm going to close out our poll here at 90% saying yes, there will be boost. I listen no matter what I'm doing. I just keep the phone in my pocket. Nice. Do you think the best LS1 combo stock block? I don't know how to answer that question. That's pretty open-ended. My 3800 intent CNC heads are finally being hand finished. Very exciting. I thought that I sent you ported heads. Richard, would you be interested or able to make playlists of all your live shows by month? I could do that, I think. Never been interested in roots blowers. I have a little experience with them after seeing a few LS. I'd like to try that myself. It works like it works on every other motor. The roots blower does what the roots blower does. It's a positive displacement blower. A 671, which is I think is what we use, is not a terribly efficient motor. It's polished and has 2 carburetors on it, so it looks very impressive. They don't tend to make a lot of power, at least not compared to a turbo or other more efficient blower at that given boost level. They look cool, though. Oh, you're building 2 GTPs. Okay. See, I didn't know, man. Ported OEM throttle bodies. The ported throttle body on an LS is only going to be beneficial if the throttle body happens to be limiting airflow into the motor. That's pretty easy to see. All you have to do is put a vacuum gauge on it and see if it makes more power. I think I would tend more toward a bigger throttle body. I run the live streams in the background. Nice. I didn't think that the throttle body was a big restriction on LSs. It depends on which one it is. I would think that the intake manifold, if the intake manifold opening is still sized for the throttle body size, I don't know if porting the throttle body is going to do very much. What is your go-to LS combination? I don't have a go-to LS combination. I don't build motors for a particular application. I have motors on the dyno and then run 50 different combinations so that you guys can see what works. So that way you get to go on there and decide which one you want. What camshaft do I want to run? What intake do I want to run? What cylinder heads do I want to run? All of that stuff. Would a leaf blower work on an LS? You probably would need multiple ones. What throttle adapter do you use when you're using an NBSS intake with a drive-by cable throttle body? I use a piece of baling wire and a Morse cable, and then I mount a throttle bracket on the dyno when we do it. It makes it a lot easier for me. Your heads are going on the nitrous build, and Tense heads are going on the twin charge GTP. That'll be cool. Didn't Roadkill do leaf blower test? They did way back, and I remember a guy doing it in the show shop long ago, before any of that stuff happened. He did it with electric ones that were plug-in because they were doing it on the chassis dyno, and it made a little bit of power where those particular blowers could supply enough airflow to that particular motor. That's the key, is you need to get enough of them to, they need to have flow more air than the motor can ingest. And on that note, it's time to go. Hopefully you guys are all doing well. I've got another video I'm putting up. It's not going to be LS and it's not going to be camshaft. It's going to be something different. So you guys will find out. And then I will see you guys all on the live feed tonight at 7 Pacific Standard Time every night. Well, most nights. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you all tonight.